Welcome to the Sanity Project Podcast, the place for techies and non-techies who work in the techie world whose work-life balance plan has imploded. We're here to provide solutions that will help both the techie and non-techie live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hi, this is Joanne Victoria, and welcome back to another great episode of the Sanity Project Podcast. I'm Joanne Victoria, your I Know What Works coach, and I'm the author of 7 books. And you can find them on my website at askjoannevictoria.com. The Sanity Project Podcast is a platform for experts in the personal development area, and we like to hear experts share their wisdom, expertise, and solutions that will help the IT pro and others who sneak onto the podcast live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Our guest today is a lifelong entrepreneur who helps coaches get more clients without paid advertising. He achieves this with his coaching programs, his podcasts, his Facebook group, The Coaching Jungle, and his exclusive print newsletter, Secret Coach Club. For those of you who have your computer at the ready and you need to learn more about our guest, go to naturalborncoaches.com. Marc Mawhinney has been a speaker at events like Social Media Marketing World and frequently makes media appearances and contributes for entrepreneur.com. Marc's topic today is going to be about bouncing back from adversity, and it seems a lot of people have adversity. Marc, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Joanne.
I really appreciate you being here. I want everybody to know who listens that Marc has been responsible for many of the changes that I've made in my working experience, the most recent one being my daily emails.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I'm on my 63rd success.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You got through the hardest bout. It's getting through the first, what does it say to establish a habit? I've heard 66 days, 21 days, who knows, but you've gotten through the hardest part.
I think I've gotten over the hump, but
yes.
It's still a challenge, but I've gotten over that hump where I don't know anything anymore and I will never be able to write about anything anymore. But Marc is going to talk to us, as I say, about bouncing back from adversity because he's been through his own and his experiences with his coaches. So what can you tell us about adversity, Marc? What is truly adversity? I think the word is kind of misused from time to time.
Well, when we say adversity, I don't mean you got a flat tire or you got a parking ticket, although those aren't necessarily good things. But adversity is something that especially entrepreneurs run into that I see, but I think every human being at some point in their lives would be shocked if someone didn't have to go through adversity. So for me, my meat grinder moment when I got put through the grinder actually happened after about a 10-year stretch through my 20s with very little hiccups and no falling down. I had about a decade in real estate where everything was going great. Every year my numbers were jumping up a lot. I was building a team and I felt like I could do no wrong. And then 2009 hit and all of a sudden, bang, as I was entering my 30s. So I know why they called them the dirty 30s.
Yeah.
And August 11th, 2009, everything came crashing down. That was the worst day of my life, but everything has worked out, or I wouldn't be chatting with you here today and doing what I'm doing in the coaching world had that not happened. However, it was definitely a very difficult time. And the interesting things I learned more in those times of adversity than I had in the 10 years of nonstop success before that. But yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Well, I was in real estate myself, not at about the same time. I left it a few years prior, and I kept my license, but I'm glad and then I got 2 licenses, one in California, one in Washington, thinking I was going to do that. And then 2009 came here as well. And it hit hard and you just have to adjust. It's not easy once you get out of the
Yeah, well, the mistake I made is I listened to Warren Buffett, who's, and what I mean by that, he's a smart guy, but he has that saying where he said, when everyone else is fearful, that's when you should be aggressive. And when everyone else is aggressive, that's when you should be fearful or a little more conservative. So, of course, everyone was afraid I'm in Canada, but we saw what was going on in the United States in 2008 with a Great Recession. And I said, okay, everyone's being fearful. Now's the time to be aggressive, like good old Warren Buffett says. And I picked the wrong time to undergo a massive expansion. And our market just completely collapsed early 2009. It was and it still hasn't recovered fully. It's not a great real estate market here in the East Coast of Canada. And everything just collapsed. And I had to, I felt like my identity was ripped away because my whole adult life had been spent in real estate, and I identified myself as a real estate guy. And then all of a sudden, bang, the next day I'm not in real estate and it's all over. So it was an interesting experience. I say it was a lot like the second Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire when he loses his powers, Spider-Man No More. That's what I felt like. I lost my powers and I didn't know what the heck I was going to do.
Well, especially when you're in real estate, your name is in front all the time. That's what you're known by. Oh, call Mark, call Joanne, call Mark, call Mark. Where's Mark?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, in my marketplace too, I always say in my smallish city of New Brunswick, Canada, East Coast of Canada, if a cat gets stuck in a tree, they run a front page story. So the local media was just hammering away at me for, God, it seemed like there were days when I would literally call my mother and say, hey, Mom, you should probably not read the paper today. Don't pick up the paper. That's not a call you want to make to your parents, and call my dad and tell him that. But it was very frustrating because a lot of times when people go through adversity, it's not being plastered on the front page of the paper, or on the radio or whatever. They had a field day with me. I was a piñata. And if I got a parking ticket, they would run a story on it. It was, for a while there, for months, it was very, very stressful with it. So I should have coined the term fake news years before Trump did, because there is I learn a lesson when it comes to the media that they don't always report the both sides of a story, or they don't
sorry. It's like you really expected them to, right?
Maybe I'm being naive. Before that, I assumed if something was in the newspaper. Now, this was 2009. This was before the term fake news was coined and everything we see nowadays. This was in the Stone Ages. But in the early 2000s, I assumed that for the most part, journalists, reporters, newspapers would at least do some due diligence and not print outright lies, or take just a story, part of a story from one person, run it as if it's gospel. And then I learned really quickly that, I canceled my newspaper subscription. We'll put it to you that way. And I still don't trust the news 100%, even now.
I don't even watch it.
Oh, the mainstream news is garbage. I mean, it's, I watch a lot of yours in the States. I mean, it's great for entertainment, but when I'm watching CNN or any of those, I view it more as opinion, not as unbiased news. I think things are really crazy nowadays.
Oh, absolutely. They just write what their perception of things is, and that's it. They don't care about the truth.
No, exactly. And I mean, God, I don't want to get you in trouble, so I'm not going to talk too much about politics. I could talk all day about politics, but when the percentage of negative news is 93%, 94% against the president, I don't care who you have as president. There's no way, if they're reporting and being honest about it, that's going to be at 94%. Now, maybe it's at 60%, maybe it's at 70%. When it's almost 100%, that's when most people looking at it objectively think, maybe there's a bit of a bias here. And I know it goes both sides. There's right-wing media and left-wing or whatever, but it's I don't trust the news as my as a unbiased source. Again, I just look at a lot of it as opinion.
It totally is, and sometimes humorous. But as I say, I don't pay attention to it. I don't go that far. So when it's 2009, people are writing terrible things about you, and you're staying in bed with the covers over, and what do you do?
Well, I didn't stay in bed with the covers over my head, although I probably felt like it some days. But at the time when all this was happening, my son, who's now 10, he was just, a year and a half old. So any entrepreneur going through adversity, the best motivation you can have is to have family, children that you have to put food on their table. So I didn't have the luxury of laying in bed all day. I just kept going and plowing through it because I had a little guy there that I had to support and had to put food on the table there. But one thing that I did, which really helped when everything imploded and there were days I felt like giving up, I dove back into the personal development books, all the classics that I had been devouring for years. And I'm a huge reader. I still have a ton of books. But the first thing I did the day after my business closed is I ran out, and I've always been a fan of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. That was the first self-help book, personal development book that I ever read back in high school. I bought a workbook set at the local bookstore, and I got to work on that. And my ex-wife, my wife at the time, she said to me, you've been spending $50 on that. We have to watch our money now going through this, what happened. And I said, this is the exact time I should be buying things like this. This is when I need it. And I thought, if push comes to shove, I'll put some mustard and ketchup on the pages and I'll just scarf it down. There's some food. But those books saved me. They really did. And there's a book that I came across after the closure. I wish I had it back in 2009, but I think it should be required reading for anyone, especially going through a difficult time. And that book is Thick Face, Black Heart by Chinding Chu. And that's my favorite book now, that and Think and Grow Rich. And I love that book, but that book will help you develop a thick skin and get through the tough times.
Yeah, people, it depends. Tough times are all the time, although right now it seems as though there are tougher times, but I think a lot of that is, again, what people are pouring on to certain facts and issues. But I think people don't know how to come out of tough times.
Well, people need to get a grip. And again, after 2016, when I see people in the online space who are almost bragging about laying in bed in the fetal position for a week crying because Trump was elected.
Oh,
and then the next posts are asking for business. I'm thinking, if you're out there as a business, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or whatever. If you're in the fetal position because your candidate lost the election, grow up. You got some issues, and you're in no position to be helping people if you can't handle your candidate losing an election. I noticed that too. I am from a similar type work ethic, if you want to call it that, where you just pick yourself up and you keep moving. If you find a tool along the way, as you did with the Think and Grow Rich book, and as well as the workbook, then you've got something to hold on to. You've got something to follow. I have very little shrift with people who give up and just go to bed, or when I say go to bed, I'm talking about giving up, that. Right. What I find, especially in the online space, is people forget that they're businesses. It doesn't feel like business because, take for example, I work from a home office, and a lot of perhaps people listening do as well. And it doesn't always feel real if you're working from a home office as opposed to owning ABC widgets on Main Street with people walking in and out like a real business. Mm-hmm. But when you own a business, especially you're an entrepreneur, but if you're a professional and you're on your Facebook and you're talking about your spouse cheating on you, you're talking about dumping their clothes in the front yard. There's somebody I saw on my Facebook who's been sharing actual legal documents going through all her issues with her divorce. I'm thinking, man, that is...
I'm sorry.
Like, No, I'm dead serious. And I'm kind of like, the meme with Michael Jackson and the popcorn in the theater from Thriller. That's me. I try not to pay much attention when I see it come through, but I'm like, oh my God, this is like a soap opera. But you have to remember that you're in business there, and you have to know where to draw the line. So I'm all for being authentic, but there comes a point where you can be too authentic, and some people are going overboard with the whole authentic thing. They're taking it a little bit too far, and they're forgetting that, hey, they're actually in business.
Well, yeah, they take authenticity and overuse that word. It's not about sharing everything that's going on in your life, because who cares? Number one, I don't want to read all that personal stuff. It's like I stop dealing with somebody who does anything similar to that. I don't want to have them as my friend or listen to what they have. I might on Facebook, you have a 30-day stop from hearing from them, and it usually works out quite well.
Well, the problem nowadays is that victimhood is what people are striving for. It's what's celebrated. You're in the Northwestern U.S., so not to get political again, but I've heard about some of your colleges and some of the nutty things going on up in, in the campuses up there with safe spaces and all this other stuff and threatening professors for God knows what. And that's a problem. We're in a safe space culture where everybody's getting offended and stuff like that, but they're just, I hate to say everybody's crazy. I know not everyone's crazy. That's a generalization, but many times I'm looking online and on social media, I'm like, people are friggin' nuts.
I agree with you. I say the same thing. I say they're idiots and morons, and they should just, it's like when I see people marching for some service that they want, whatever these parades, and I happen to be involved on the street in the downtown Seattle or something like that. And I'm just saying, go get a job, go do something, go contribute, do something. I don't care what you do. It doesn't matter. I've worked since I was 13, and it's, it always helps to have something to look forward to, even if it's a job you may not like, but it keeps you grounded. And these people, I want a safe place. The safe place is within, it's not without.
Yeah, and I mean, it's getting crazy now. It's out in your way. It was Brett Weinstein from Evergreen, I think it was a college. He was actually a Bernie Sanders supporter. He's hardly a knuckle-dragging conservative, and he's getting attacked because he's not as nutty enough for everybody, and they're threatening him and carrying on and stuff. So I don't know. I try to block it out, and I know who I want to deal with and who I want to associate with, and that's the other thing. Coming back to adversity, it's really important the people that you associate and what you let into your brain when you're going through that. Because if you're going through a tough time, I would think Facebook's probably one of the worst places you can hang around. Mm-hmm. If you're on there looking for pity, sympathy, you see people posting all the time, please pray for me, I'm going through this, and then they give a big description, and sure, you'll get people like, oh gee, I feel so bad for you and I'm thinking of you and all this stuff, but I don't think that's really helping to have a pity party like that. I never posted anything when I was going through my tough time. I would never look to Facebook for pity or anything going through it. I'm like, I'm just got to ride this out and get through it. So
it's very personal too. I mean, when you have to come up from the basement or up from the street, after you had to in 2009, and I'm sure several of our listeners have had their moments. You don't need a safe space culture. You don't need to watch, listen, read, or hear anything about anybody else. Why? I call it the PMW. I'll explain that when we talk after the show. But I don't appreciate that, and I pay very little attention to that, and I disassociate myself from that. I don't share much personal stuff online, except a few of the, algorithms they have. Oh, if you were born in this year, what does your future look like, kind of thing. But other than that, it's just business. It's business and casual friendship, except the ones I know for sure. But even then, all I say is thank you. I don't go into my relationships with people or my own issues. Why should they care about me?
Yeah, people really, they care about themselves. It's What's In It For Me, WIIFM, their favorite radio station. So they might give some sympathy and comment on your Facebook post or whatever, but at the end of the day, people are worrying about themselves. And one thing that I always keep in mind, and I mention this to anyone else who's going through a difficult time, it's a story that I heard in Success Magazine that was told by Mel Robbins, was writing one of the columns there. And anyone that doesn't know Mel Robbins, she wrote the book, The 5-Second Rule, and some good books. Well, she was at the height of the Anthony Weiner scandal. Do you remember that?
The which?
The Anthony Weiner scandal. He was a politician.
Oh, God. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
We want to keep your show PG-13. So
I know. If they don't know, that's fine. They'll find out.
Yeah, and with a last name like Wiener, it's not going to be a surprise what they find out. But anyways, a guy tweeted out some pictures on his public timeline and thinking they're going to a woman who wasn't his wife by direct message. So obviously, it was a big deal because I remember even here in Canada, everyone was having a field day talking. It seemed like they were talking about it. And the late night host, that was all anything was talking about, was Anthony Weiner. And Mel Robbins was telling a story how she went into a cab in New York City at the height of the Anthony Weiner scandal. And she was just making conversation with the cab driver. She said, gee, what do you think about this whole Anthony Weiner thing? And the cab driver said, who? And she said, Anthony Weiner, you haven't heard what's going on there? And he said, no, who is that? So you would think if anyone would be talking about Anthony Weiner or would know about it, would be a cab driver right in the heart of it, right in New York. But this guy didn't care. He was worried about paying his mortgage. He was, who knows, his wife could be sick or who his daughter was dating, anything like that. He didn't care about that. And Mel Robbins' point there was that not everybody is talking about us. We humans are self-centered. We like to think that everybody's focusing on us and watching Mark or watching Joanne. They're not. They're worried about their own situation. So if you're going through a difficult time, it might feel like the spotlight is on you, but it's not everyone's watching you and talking about you around the dinner table, even if it feels like it.
I used to feel like that. That people were watching me when I was young, and I used to go bowling, and I would hate bowling. I would hate bowling because I wasn't very good, but of course I didn't apply myself that much because I didn't think I was very good. But I would swear that people were watching me fail,
Yes.
and I mean, those are the words I'll put to it today. But I thought I was just making a spectacle of myself. I couldn't do that, couldn't do this. And that's what I heard in my head right now when you said that. But nobody cared. They had their own game to take care of. They had their own life to take care of. So what she said and what you're saying is absolutely, totally true. It's not all about you. It's about themselves.
And if you go through life worried about everybody watching you and what they're going to say, you're not really going to try anything or take any risks because you're going to be scared to death that you're going to get judged and you're going to get criticized. So, by the way, I went bowling for the first time in years recently, and I was absolutely horrible. I thought, oh, gee, when I was bowling as a kid, I used to be able to bowl in the 90s, so I'll be able to bowl 110, 120 now that I'm an adult. Yeah, right. I was lucky to get 60. It was horrible.
Well, it's just like anything else. Whatever you do that works for you or whatever you do that you want to work for you, you have to continue doing it and practice.
You got her.
And then didn't you take some, at least I read, that you took some flack from whoever when you came up with your print newsletter? You tried.
Yes, I got attacked by some environmentalists. Apparently I was trying to ruin Mother Earth. I was going to be killing the forests of the world by having a print newsletter, a 16-page print newsletter. So what I did in that case, which I recommend people do, if you ever get any trolls or any nuts crawling out of the woodwork and sending you weird emails and attacking and stuff, turn it into content to sell something else. So I also had that last September. I sent an email out on it was the International Day of Peace, and my email that day had the subject line, "Why the International Day of Peace is a scam." And I got some flack for that, some people who were on my list responding, including one woman who wasn't very peaceful, although she works for a peace organization. But anyways, and I got these messages back from people, but I turned that into more content. That's great. I wish I got more trolls and more critics. It would be more content for me.
Right. Well, you're right about that. And you have to do what you know in your heart is going to work for you in your life. You can't pay any attention to anybody else. I understand those issues, been experienced them myself throughout my life because I do things my way and nobody likes it.
I don't know if you remember this from the Facebook group. And I mean, I have a great Facebook group. There's awesome people in there. I can't complain. It's a really good group with good people. But last year I posted a poll once asking, who would you rather be mentored by, Gary Vaynerchuk or Tim Ferriss?
Right.
I don't see that as a controversial question. It's two polar opposites. Gary Vaynerchuk's a hustle, work 24 hours a day and grind it out. Tim Ferriss is the 4-hour work week guy. That is not a controversial question. However, I had some people saying it was sexist, misogynist, it was against women, there should have been a woman for one of the two choices. And I just said, look, if this offended you, please leave. This group isn't for you. This isn't going to be a safe space. And I think I had about 15, 20 people out of, we've got almost 16,000 in there at time of recording now. So you know what? I would rather lose those 15 people. If it triggers them that much, then they can, and that's their choice. They can go to other groups or whatever, but I'm not going to be so paranoid about posting a poll that has two men in it that I'm somehow offending people and I'm on the wrong side of history for posting a poll, Gary Vaynerchuk and Tim Ferriss. Like, give me a break. And most people, I think, agreed with me in there. Now, I had private messages from some people saying, good for you, Mark, to hold your ground and not apologize, because I had people demanding I apologize. And they said, I agree with you. I just didn't want to comment because I didn't want them attacking me. Oh. I just want to let you know that I agree with you. So that's what gives me hope, is sometimes I look online and I think, oh my God, everyone is nuts. But it's a bubble there. And when you get outside that bubble and look around, there are a lot more people that have common sense and aren't crazy. You just don't see them because they're being quiet. They don't want to get piled on by a bunch of social justice warriors and all this stuff. So they keep quiet. But I get a ton of messages from people, hey, good for you, Mark. I agree with you on this or whatever. And yeah, those people are crazy.
Well, I've never disagreed with anything you have put out. I mean, I appreciate all the work that you've done to share with everyone else, because this has been work on your part, lots of work. And why would I care? Why would I even say to someone, or, if, for example, somebody else did this, certainly not you, because you don't do anything that's tragic, but if somebody else did this, why would I say to them, I don't like what you do? Why would you, why would they even, who the hell am I, Joanne Victoria, to say I don't like what you do? Buzz off.
I don't expect everyone to agree with me. I like debate. If somebody has a legitimate point with a debate, and it doesn't turn into personal, or they don't, like I mentioned, I don't get along with social justice warriors, but if you can have a civilized debate and a calm debate, rational, great. I love having a debate, or please, but not with some of the stuff that people choose to get offended by and triggered by online. And there's some people I think are disappointed if they don't get offended one day. They're scanning, they're kind of like the Terminator. They're scanning social media looking for something to get offended by. And if they can't find it, they're going to make it up somewhere because they want to be offended every single day. I look at the amount of time they spend fighting on social media over this stuff. I'm thinking, man, if you took half that time and put it towards your business, you would be rolling, instead of fighting over these friggin' issues on Facebook or Twitter or whatever.
I mean, these social media platforms don't matter in the big scheme of things. They're just barely a blip in the big world. And this world will be here no matter how much paper you use. The world will remain. The Secret Coach Club will thrive. Doesn't matter.
I think I should buy a private island somewhere. I'll shave my head like Dr. Evil, and I'll come up with some plan to destroy the world with my print newsletter. That's been my plan. Actually, I've been working on this for about 20 years to hatch it. And now finally, I feel like my opening is there. My plan, to destroy the forests of the world, I can now finally do it.
Yeah, here we go. All right. So you're saying, I've made some notes here. Choose your friends wisely when you're going through adversity. Don't have the losers. I'm paraphrasing here. I'm just making this up. Don't have losers hanging on to you. And certainly, I would think, not have somebody else who's going through a similar situation. And you picked up the Think and Grow Rich book with a workbook set. And I think that is great advice for somebody listening. Think and Grow Rich. Other people have referred to that. And you've also pointed out your favorite book, which is Thick Face, Black Heart. Is that correct?
You got it.
Okay,
yes.
So reverse that. And if you're approaching trolls, or the trolls or nuts or morons or idiots are coming and attacking you, if you have the opportunity, turn it into content. And if you can't, send the emails to Marc Mawhinney and he'll turn it into content.
Well, actually, I'll put a plug in for someone who's in your neck of the woods, because I have to give him props. When it comes to my troll response, I've learned from him, and I bought a product from him, and he's excellent. Ben Settle, who I've learned a lot from with daily emails. I've had him on my podcast. He's going to be coming back on for an encore thing. He has a product called Copy Troll. And anyone who wants to know how to deal with trolls, check out Ben's thing. It should be on his website, bensettle.com, or message him. But Ben makes some really good points. He shows case studies because he gets a lot of trolls in there. But he has a really good way of dealing with them. He doesn't get emotional and let them rattle him. He actually turns it into sales. And from what I've learned from him and other people, I've been able to do the same. I don't get too worked up with the haters and stuff. I turn it more to my advantage. And actually, it's fun because you can either turn it into content, like I mentioned, by mocking them and turn it into a lesson. But there's also something strangely satisfying about ignoring them. because they're doing this to try to get some sort of reaction. And if you're ignoring them and talking about whatever they said, but not tagging them in and stuff, they will say, hey, why aren't you talking to me? Yeah, I'm right here.
I agree.
They want that. And the rule that Ben uses is if somebody is underneath his level of notoriety, name recognition, or so on, he doesn't go down. He doesn't fight with them because that's just going to raise their profile. He stays above it. Now, if it's somebody who has really high name recognition, like Ben got into a Twitter fight with some hip hop guy that has 1 million followers, and in that case, he took the fight to him because that guy had 1 million followers and that could help Ben. But that's a rule that he uses is he looks at the person. If it's a nobody that's not doing anything, he's not going to get down in the mud with them. If it's someone with a really good profile that's well known, then it's a little different. By attacking them, you could definitely do a lot with that.
Yeah, fight above your weight, people. If you're going to do that, fight above your weight. Don't deal with anybody below that. Well, one last tip. I'm sure you have one last tip for people who are going through adversity and how to handle that. We've covered the book and the friends and your favorite book, Thick Face, Black Heart, and going to your website, of course, is one of them because you have a lot of information with your podcast guests as well. And they could get information there. And also, if they sign up on your website for your daily emails, they'll get a lot of information there and more of your warped sense of humor.
Thank you.
But I love it.
Polite. I've been called worse than that. So it's a dry Canadian sense of humor.
I love it. I read them every day. In fact, you have a special folder with Marc's emails. So
I could die a happy man. Yes.
Good. There you go. All right. I thank you very, very much for showing up today. I know you're very busy.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me, and congrats on the podcast. Seems like just yesterday that you launched it, so time flies.
Time does fly. The more you keep at it. I try never to give up anything for a long time because being the person I am, I kind of stick to things or processes and whatever appears for me that I can click into my head and it makes sense and it intuitively works. I don't give up. I've never given up. I can't remember when I have given up. And that's one thing that I know that I do. And I see that you do the same. You don't give up. You just push everything out of your way and you keep moving forward. And I think more people have to do that. Stop reading the newspaper. Stop getting engaged in the crap that people are trying to sell you. When I say sell you, that's a sarcastic way of saying you're buying what they're selling. And it's trash, most of it. And just find your own path and go on your own path. Marc Mawhinney has done that. Several others, or a few others, have done that as well. And one last question before we close: who won the battle between Gary and Ted?
And Tim. Tim Ferriss. If memory serves me right, Gary had the lead, and then Tim. It was very close the whole time, but Tim pulled it out at the very end by a little bit. We had hundreds of votes on it, and for the record, I tend to lean more towards Gary's side of it. I've struggled with workaholism in the past, so I'm trying to get better, but I'll never be a 4-hour work week guy. I would go crazy working 4 hours a week. So if I had a choice, I would rather be mentored. They're both brilliant guys, don't get me wrong, but I
understand. Yeah, it's just what your style is.
Yeah, that's right. Now Gary is like a hyena on Red Bull, right? Like his energy's through the roof. He's very like a maniac in a lot of ways. I think that rubs off on people in a good way. It would give you that energy. Although I think if he was around you 24/7, you'd get a little bit tired of it probably. But I would choose to be mentored by Gary. I'd be choosing to be mentored by either of them. But if I had a choice, I'd go with Gary.
Yeah, I would go with Gary. Gary's good for me for about an hour, though. I get tired because he's just throwing his intensity, not the words, his intensity.
Well, what I think's happened as no fault of Tim Ferriss, but when he chose the title for that book and everything, the 4-Hour Work Week, I think he's attracted a lot of people who are get rich quick type people because they think, ooh, 4 hours a week and I can be a billionaire. And I'm not saying that get rich quick people don't go towards Gary as well, but if you look at both of them, with Gary, it's clear, he's very clear, you're going to have to work your tail off to be successful, which I tend to agree with on it. So I think no fault of Tim's, just by choosing to title the book like that, he tends to attract slackers or people who are lazy, on the lazy end of the spectrum. And that's why I'd go with Gary.
Yeah, I agree. It's, with Gary, if I worked with him, I could, I would have to adjust my own pace, but I think that he works more in just keep moving. I don't know what I would do if I could only work 4 hours a week.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sure our audience loves this, and I suggest, as always, that you re-listen to this podcast, because I know you've missed 50%, because you can't hear every word at every moment and your mind is traveling. So re-listen to Marc Mawhinney, and we are grateful that he was here today. I know that I am, and I'm sure the listeners are. And everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Work-Life Balance. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.